My sister went home with her boyfriend every single night, yet she never once worried about birth control. When I finally asked her why, her answer made my blood run cold. She was using the back door, a desperate, reckless loophole to preserve her technical virginity. I tried to warn her. I told her that the body wasn't designed for that kind of constant trauma, that she was courting infection and permanent damage. I told her that in this day and age, a man who truly loved her wouldn't care about a piece of tissue or a pure status. In my first life, she actually listened. She stopped, but later, after she and that boyfriend broke up, our mother orchestrated a match with a billionaire's heir. On their wedding night, because there was no bloom on the sheets, the groom turned on her instantly. By the next morning, the scandal was the talk of every high society gala in the city. Ruined and humiliated, my sister didn't blame the man or our mother's archaic obsession. She blamed me. She pinned me down, her face twisted with a primal, jagged hatred, and forced my head into a pot of screaming, boiling water. "It's your fault," she hissed as the steam scorched my lungs. "If I were still pure, I'd be the queen of this city. No one would be laughing at me." Then, the world went black. When I opened my eyes, I was back on that humid afternoon, sitting on the velvet sofa, listening to her brag about her secret for the very first time. "Jade, seriously, stop worrying. I'm not going to get pregnant. Every time I'm with Kyle, we stay off the main road. If you know what I mean." Bridget shifted on the cushion, a playful, cat-like smirk on her lips. Looking at her face, I felt a phantom surge of agony, the memory of boiling water scalding my throat. It took every ounce of my willpower to keep my hands from shaking. I took a slow breath and forced a smile. "Wow," I whispered. "That's actually really clever of you." Bridget leaned in, eager to play the mentor. "I'm telling you, Jade, a man can get just as much pleasure that way. You can't keep listening to Mom's Victorian-era lectures. It's the 21st century. Chasing the high is all that matters." She paused, her eyes scanning my plain sweater with pity. "Maybe that's why you can't keep a boyfriend. You're too repressed." I just smiled. The only reason Bridget was acting so smug was that Kyle, her current flame, was my ex. We had been together for 2 years. He broke up with me because I refused to sleep with him before I felt ready. 3 days after the breakup, he and Bridget went public on Instagram. It wasn't until I went to Kyle's apartment to pack the last of my things that I realized they had been hooking up long before we ended. The neighbors told me they could hear Bridget's theatrics from 2 floors away. At the time, my first instinct wasn't even anger. It was fear. I was terrified of what would happen if Mom found out. Our father died young, leaving Diane, our mother, to raise us alone. She was a social consultant for the ultra-wealthy, a high-end matchmaker who navigated the complex waters of old money families. Dealing with that echelon of society had hardened her. She knew exactly what those men looked for in a wife. To them, purity wasn't a moral virtue. It was a luxury brand. "Marriage is your second chance at birth," Mom used to say, her voice like cold steel. "These men might talk about being progressive, but in their hearts, they want a woman who hasn't been touched. Don't you dare lower your market value, or don't bother calling me mother." In my previous life, I had spent days agonized over whether to tell Mom about Bridget's behavior. But when I'd confronted Bridget, she'd laughed and told me she was still a virgin, because of her little workaround. Back then, I had been a fool. I was worried about her health. As someone with a nursing degree, I knew the risks. I knew the muscles back there weren't meant for that kind of repetitive, violent strain. I knew about the potential for incontinence, the tearing, the permanent scarring. I had given her a lecture on anatomy.